It's nice to see you. Yeah.
It's harder.
Thanks for coming.
Town hour.
Nice to see you.
Hi, Hal. You're kind of hogging the shot there. Yeah, really.
So the hearing was pretty much on the opening arguments for the lawsuit of Lenpape Resources versus the town of Avon and the New York State DEC. The attorney for Lenpape had the first chance to present arguments. He said that pretty much Avon's moratorium would put Lenpape out of business, and Lenape's been in business in Avon for over 30 years. Then he went on to talk about how gas development started in New York and has been here and hasn't caused any problems, and that the future of the industry would be to move in the direction of the high-volume horizontal hydrofracking. He talked about our movement and the anti-fracking movement. He actually had some displays up of flyers that we've sent out of the invitation to the rally outside the courthouse. Pointed out that we were out there at the same time the proceedings were going on. And then
nice
he talked
of him
about
to do that.
Yeah,
it was.
I'd like to thank him for drawing our attention to this.
So then he pretty much just laid out his argument, which was that the law clearly stated that the state DEC superseded all local governments when it came to regulating the gas industry, and that in previous cases where this issue had been addressed, like in Dryden and Middlefield, that those justices hadn't done their job and read the statutes clearly, because if they had, they would have reached a different decision. So he encouraged Justice Wiggins to read those statutes, and that the only outcome of that would possibly be that he would reach a different decision. After that, the defense for Avon spoke. He made it very clear that the plaintiff's argument was incorrect, and that the state has always asserted that the government closest to the people, which in this case would be the town board of Avon, who were democratically elected, were the best ones to decide what was good for their town and what wasn't, and that they couldn't regulate the industry, but they could decide what activities were allowed in their community through zoning. Then the state DEC attorney, who was, I believe, from the State Attorney General's office, pretty much raised the same arguments that the lawsuit was invalid because what the state had really didn't bear on the moratorium, because it was Avon that had presented the moratorium.
Professor Kleinman said that he thought that part of it was intimidation, and I think that he's correct about that, that they want to intimidate the towns and show them that they will sue them to make the towns concerned about that and the expense of the lawsuit. But
this was certainly the case in my own community in Rush, New York. When our town was considering whether or not to pass a moratorium last year, the Albany-based law firm Hinman Straub sent our town board an 85-page memo on behalf of its client, the Independent Oil and Gas Association of New York. This is the leading gas industry trade organization in the state. To be more precise, the memo was sent by the PR division of Hinman Straub, not the legal division, but it was nevertheless printed on the law firm's legal letterhead, which was presumably to send a message to our town that if they enacted the moratorium, it would lead to serious legal consequences, and expensive ones. This tactic, we discovered, turned out to be a slightly toned-down version of the gas industry's earlier strategy of dealing with towns that resisted fracking. That earlier approach was simply to issue a direct legal threat when it came but when it became apparent to the gas industry that such threats were bad publicity, that they would be seen as bullying towns, they developed the subtler means of intimidation that we experienced in Rush. Fortunately, our town officials, to their great credit, didn't flinch, and we proceeded to pass the moratorium last year.
for the towns, they have to think not just about the expense of the lawsuit, but also the cost of allowing it and the damage it will do to the town, which I think that's what the residents have been pointing out. I tend to think that Holco is doing this and Lenpape not just for his own personal interest, but as a representative of the gas industry, since he is a long-term board member of IOGA. You know, I would expect that he's probably getting some support from the gas industry generally for this lawsuit. One thing that may be a factor here in bringing another case, even though the Dryden Middlefield case is fairly clearly set forth the law in New York, which was what many of us who've looked into this thought that they would decide based on previous cases of the Court of Appeals. This is a separate department. Our state is divided into 4 judicial departments, and this is the 4th department here. There have been some previous cases, I think, that they referred to those, and maybe they are just hoping that a judge in this department will rule differently. So they may feel they don't have a lot to lose and trying to get another case and trying to get a different verdict. I don't think that the facts of this case are actually, you know, no better for the industry than Dryden and Middlefield. So I would not expect that they're going to get a favorable decision, but maybe they feel they don't have a lot to lose by trying.
And I think too, I think IOGA is using this as a staging ground to try to overturn all the moratoriums in New York State, and this is like ground zero for them to begin that battle. And that's what I think.
So they want to, you know, that's what they want to happen, and they're just going to try again and again to do that.
Right.
Right. I would echo that. I think it's largely an intimidation tactic. I mean, we've been talking with Jim Campbell, who's the lawyer for Avon, and just simply the way they conduct themselves in court proceedings, like the lawyers for Lenpape wouldn't even shake the Avon lawyers' hands at the ends of some of their pre-court meetings. There's just open-ended claims in the lawsuit, and it's kind of dumbfounding to, I think, many of us why it is they're doing it. And I think it can only be, I mean, the best answer is that it's for intimidation. Then, I mean, Rachel pointed out, I didn't even realize that Livingston County had the largest density of moratorium in the state. So maybe they viewed this as a strategic move to try to quell the kind of momentum that's happening on a local legislative level. And you know, I largely feel that the industry obviously is working together to try to, you know, stop the grassroots activism, and I think they're kind of stumbling, and they didn't really count on us being so stubborn and not easily rolling over and allowing them to walk over us. So I don't think they particularly have some good tacticians working for them at this point. Yeah.
Today, you may be in touch with some of the other, but there were lots of organizations here today from a wide range of counties. Mm-hmm. And we had good representation from around the state, really, which was nice.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that if they think that this is going to be a ground zero, they're making a really bad step, because there's so much support here, and we had people out from all over, and yeah, I think it's a huge misstep for them, honestly. It seems like with this case, because it's gonna come out looking really good for us politically, and it really only spurs things more. I was really glad to have this action here rather than focusing on the one in Albany, to really drive home the point to everyone that this isn't just something that's going to happen in the Southern Tier or somewhere else, that there is a home front battle. And I think it just energizes people more to think about how nearby the risk is with this issue.
And just some of Rochester's drinking water comes from Livingston County, so I mean, the city of Rochester surely looks upon this as their neighborhood.
Yeah, absolutely, and they would be looking to us to accept wastewater into our treatment facilities as well.
Yeah, I think that I have an aside on definitely as an aside that the connection between Hemlock and Canadice Lakes is like major reservoirs for a large municipal body. Should be taken. I don't know. It's kind of been pushed to the side from Skinny Atlas and Syracuse and New York City and the New York City watershed near the Hudson. And it's a similar situation where there's these large rural bodies of water, and the southern end of Hemlock is only a couple miles from northern Steuben County, and the infrastructure, and Steuben was one of the Dub sacrifice zones, so the infrastructure is quite close, and kind of bridges this 50-mile gap that may seem enough for some people in Rochester, but I think it's close. I think it's going to become more clear that they aren't immune to this, and that everybody needs to kind of band together in New York State. The other thing I think that's kind of interesting with this lawsuit is that, we've kind of witnessed it over working with Livonia for the last year, is that, the attorney for Livonia is interesting, is also Jim Campbell, who's the attorney for Avon and a number of other small towns around here. And going in, a lot of these towns, kind of very conservative, very, kind of pro-industry, less regulation-minded people are being turned slightly radical, slightly to the side of us pushing for sustainable development and more regulation on fossil fuels, because they're not being able. They're seeing that these people won't even shake their hands, and that they're throwing out these crazy claims in court. And I think it's their lawsuit is working against them slowly, as people in these towns that normally wouldn't even think about these issues are starting to come to light, because this industry has been brought to their doorsteps, and they're seeing it for its true colors.
That was one of the other things that was pointed out in the oral arguments in court today, was that Hochul and Lenpape didn't have any permits for any new activities within the town of Avon. So it was kind of like our argument: why is he making a big stink about this if he's not planning on doing anything anyway?
The latest example of the gas industry attempting to intimidate local communities is unfolding right here in this courthouse. Lenpape Resources is attempting to sue the town of Avon for $50 million for enacting a moratorium last summer, even though the town took great pains to grandfather in Lenape's existing wells.
Now, does he have storage as well, underground storage?
Not as far as I know.
No.
There is a fair amount of underground storage over in Honeoye, though, which is in Ontario County.
I see.
And there's actually been some contaminated, at least one that we know of for sure, contaminated wells, water wells in Honeoye. It happens to be friends of ours that had to have their water completely shut down because it had all the VTEX chemicals in there: benzene, toluene, ethyl benzene, xylene. Methane levels got so high they had to vent it outside. And that's from a vertically fracked well recently.
Right, that's not from storage, that's from actual re-stimulation of vertical.
Right,
And
but they are storing it up there.
Right.
Not a Marcellus well, but another.
Right, and I think it's a Medinocene stone, sandstone.
Yeah.
So they've been doing a lot of drilling up in the Honeoye area.
The Honeoye storage has a pretty extensive geographic footprint. Over significant portions of Honeoye and Bristol, right? I mean, both it goes into both towns, right down to the edge of Honeoye Lake and out. So it's covering many properties and many landowners that already have this lease that is, like you said, for storage. And I think it's interesting how the movement for a moratorium or for a ban in Honeoye is going as well, and how there really hasn't been much communication between the storage company and the town, as far as I know, up to this point.
No, there hasn't. Not well that we know of.
That we know of.
I'm sure
Right,
there has been.
but not publicly at least.
And who owns the storage company, the Honeoye storage?
I don't even know.
Yeah, it's as far as I know, it's Honeoye Storage. It's as far as I know, it's independent.
Independent.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. And it's just I don't know the name of.
And
it.
there is a major pipeline that's running across northern Livingston County, right? The one that runs from Buffalo to Albany.
Yeah, it runs through the town of Lima and then to Bloomfield.
So,
and
are there any compressor stations in this
There
area?
is. There's
No.
one over in the town of York.
Oh, okay.
And there's another problem there. They put in a huge metering station, right by the compressor station, and it went from a tiny little building to this fairly substantial set of buildings.
Complex. It's really a complex.
Without any kind of zoning, public hearing, or anything.
Permits.
It came right in under the radar.
Well, they did come in and apply for a building permit, but it was just a standard building permit. So it was pay your permit fee and here you go. And they didn't really look at the project, they just issued the permit.
And there's been flaring and other things.
Air quality
Yeah,
permit.
venting,
Did they
venting.
need air permits and certain?
As far as we know, they didn't get anything.
Yeah,
except
they
a
haven't
building
gotten
permit.
anything. They've just come through, and the town is very. I mean, there's a movement for a moratorium in the town right now, and the town, in addition to being kind of not responsive to arguments for a moratorium, is similarly not really paying attention to any arguments against this unpermitted station that's gone in.
They said the statute of limitations is up on it, and there's nothing they can do about it now.
Well, if they didn't get a permit, though.
They did get the
Okay.
building permit was all they were
But
required
if they needed
to
an
get.
air permit, an air emissions permit.
That wouldn't have come
things like
from
that
Avon, that
would
would
be
have
the
fallen
DEC.
under regulations.
DEC,
Right.
yeah.
I think that brings up another interesting point, though, the timing of this whole thing, and Hochul clearly using this lawsuit as a bullying tactic. We were at the meeting in York when they were going to vote on the moratorium, and Hochul sat in the front row and spoke just before, and he said, flat out, if you pass this moratorium, I will sue you. And then one of the town board members, as they went down, he was third in line, the supervisor voted yes for the moratorium. The woman was the deputy supervisor, I think, voted for the moratorium. And then the next gentleman, in the beginning of his statement, he said, I have a gas lease on my land with Lenpape Resources. And then by the end of his statement, he said that I'm opposed to a moratorium.
Well, isn't that a conflict of interest? Or,
Oh, yeah.
Many people
I mean,
believe that. Yeah.
That's the problem. The conflicts of interest are rampant, I would say, and it's just I'm still unclear, and I think a lot of people are unclear as to how to continue forward with that, other than voting them out and using that as a kind of.
Well, I think you can, because I
tactic.
talked to some people in the town of Wheeler, where a number of their board members have leases. You can ask them, you can notify them first that you believe they have a
Right.
conflict of interest, and ask them to recuse themselves from decisions
Right.
in which they have a conflict. And there are different laws that suggest that that they should do that, and there's a good memo that was prepared by the county attorney for Broome County to the Broome County legislature several years ago, telling them why they should recuse themselves if they had gas leases. Now, he's no longer the town attorney for Broome County. I don't know if it had anything to do with this memo.
Right.
But it's a good memo. I can send you a copy of
Yeah.
it. And I think that people, you should notify the town board members that you think, if they have a conflict, they should recuse themselves.
Now, Rachel, do you know if, like, the Attorney General, isn't he looking into ethics violations
So
too by the
he
court?
is, yeah. So and notify the Attorney General, but I think it's worth working on it locally too.
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah.
And another thing that's interesting about the lawsuit, the defense is provided by the insurance company, and I looked at the insurance company, which I think is a mutual
It is.
that represents the
It
towns.
represents many
Well,
municipalities across
most
New York.
municipalities across New York State. So I think it's quite significant that they, are representing the town, and obviously they're representing not just the town of Avon's
Right.
interests, but they're representing the interests of
Right.
many municipalities, and they see this as an important case.
That was a point that Jim Campbell brought up, was that they have a huge interest in seeing that, that Avon is supported, because
Yeah.
otherwise it could have a snowball effect with other towns. But the other interesting thing that Campbell mentioned was that Lenape's attorney didn't know enough that when he filed the lawsuit, because he attached a dollar amount to the lawsuit, Avon's insurance company kicked in and covers the defense. So as a bullying tactic, he kind of shot himself in the foot with that one.
Well, back what we talked about, Hemlock Lake is the watershed for Rochester, but Canadice, which is in Ontario County, also feeds into Hemlock. And so both of those are water supplies for the city of Rochester. And back in the 50s, I'm not sure exactly when, but they used transformer oil, which contained PCBs, for dust control around Canadice Lake. And because of that now, there's a tremendous amount of PCBs that are in the lake. And you're not supposed to eat the fish out of Canadice Lake anymore. And then the aquifer, there was a huge aquifer that was in the town of Honeyway, and a gentleman that we know that delivers water told us now that that water aquifer is done because of a gas station leak in the tanks. So they had to shut that aquifer down, and now they're getting water from Hemlock Lake down to that town.
Yeah, that's the other thing. A lot of Livingston County towns that are on public water also draw from that water supply.
A couple ironic things. One, because of that water supply, they're getting it from Hemlock and Canadice, and we talked about the city of Rochester. The Geneseo River also originates in Pennsylvania, and there's activity around the headwaters of the Geneseo, and Rochester is also using Lake Ontario as a source of drinking water too.
They actually also use the Geneseo. There is a small filtration and collection site in downtown by High Falls that brings water to some of the buildings right in downtown Rochester.
And do other municipalities along the route of the Genesee River use it as drinking water also?
I don't know that.
Yeah, I don't know either. I don't know.
I mean, I've heard that the Wellsville in Allegheny County does use the Genesee River.
Well, that could
Very
be.
possible.
I don't know.
And that also there was a big oil refining. Sinclair Oil, I think, had a big refinery on the river, near the river too, in the past.
So there's a lot of sources of potential contamination.
Another major thing, I mean, road spreading, I think, as a disposal method is kind of wide-reaching problem that nobody really realizes about. Like, going on right now in the town of Groveland and Canisius and a number of other area towns, they spread Kodak ash from the incinerators at Kodak. It's this black ash that they I'm sure get paid or it is at least free to spread, and instead of using a bunch of salt and sand, they spread this Kodak ash. And so our friends who live in the town of Canisius actually got their water tested, and it came up with real high levels of a bunch of heavy metals. And this is like largely uncontested practice, and so there's nothing to make me believe that these towns are going to turn down brine spreading as a potential future use. I mean, I don't think any of them are. I know the town of Groveland, I'm looking into the town of Groveland because they do spread some sort of brine. I don't know what it is exactly.
Well, I've asked in Steuben County, because a number of the towns, I live on a dirt road, our road gets spread with brine, but they insisted to me that in Steuben County what they're using is brine from a storage operation. Energy has a storage operation in Steuben County, and that's what they're using, and nothing to worry about. So we are looking into it more. But Walter Hang has posted on his website the beneficial use determinations for brine spreading in many towns. But I hadn't heard this about the fly ash. It's
currently going on, and
wow.
It's
and
like
probably other towns around the whole area, not just those.
Yeah, I know.
Canisius is also in the Hemlock Lake watershed.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, right above Hemlock.
It borders the Hemlock Lake watershed.
Yeah, a lot of dirt roads, a lot of very permeable, real steep slopes. I mean, it's going right to the lake.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of another battle, but I think it's relevant because of this BUDS. This BUDS determination is extremely concerning and kind of like going really in under the radar more than a lot of different things in New York right now.
Because I heard that in the county, now I'm forgetting the county to the west of you, but Wyoming County, that the DEC authorized a BUD determination, all this slag from Buffalo to build the road bases in all through rural Wyoming County. So that's.
I hadn't heard about that. There's
another
uncovering things. Yeah. So I mean, I guess. Have you tried getting samples from the back of the truck to actually analyze them?
Well, 2 years ago.
What is the chain of custody?
Beth Miller from So Beth talked to the guy spreading it on her place 2 years ago, and he gave her a jar, but we never got it tested.
Oh.
So, but he was friendly and offered her a jar. So we need to try to get another sample and get it tested. That's what we want to do. But I don't know if you. Well, the beneficial use determinations do tell you where it's coming from. And ours does say this energy facility. Well, some of the towns say this energy facility, and I assume ours is similar. But if you could find out where it's coming from and see if you could get a sample.
And it is the appropriate way to achieve, to like get a bud's determination through the town or through the DEC?
It's it's whoever owns the road. So there's the town road.
So the town is going to hold it. Who holds the record?
DEC. The DEC issues it to the town.
So the DEC will have a record of the issues.
They
right?
should, yeah. So Walter foiled them, and he's
Right.
got all his FOIL responses on his website.
Can we clarify that? The DEC issues it to the town. Does it matter whether it's a county or a state road or?
So you said the town is responsible for the town roads, and I'm guessing that the town roads are the ones that are the unpaved roads, and that probably most of the county roads are paved. So there wouldn't.
Not always the case.
Not always
Right.
the
And
case.
sometimes
In rural, I mean, in rural, a lot of rural New York.
We're talking about de-icing methods too, which
De-icing.
are using on
Yeah.
on the paved roads as well.
Yeah.
So are they spreading brine for de-icing?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
But in my case, I have seen this truck. It came through 3 times this summer. It wasn't even a very dusty time. It was kind of like a medium saturation time. You know, wasn't a lot of moisture. Wasn't like very little. You know, it wasn't real dry. It was just seemed like they needed to get rid of it. There was no real reason.
Well, this was the first summer they ever did our road twice too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, but it was dry. It was a dusty summer, but still.
As far as I can see, it's been ramped up, and there hasn't been really a direct correlation with like dust or atmospheric problems. You know, it seems as though they just need to get rid of it.
So we really should get testing.
Mm-hmm.
In our area, they seem to spread solid salt in the winter.
Mhm.
So, and I don't know, if you tested in the ground, you couldn't say it was the brining as opposed to the winter.
Right.
salt
I think it's totally possible, like you said, just to get a sample right off the truck. I mean, simply by asking the driver. I mean, probably largely the drivers may not know the origin. They're just told to go drive this route. So.
Yeah.
I think basically what we're seeing is like the tentacles of the gas industry just creeping through New York for a lot of different levels. The brine spreading, the storage of equipment, and it's just we can see this little bit by little bit.
We also
the
know that
encroachment.
there's already waste disposal in New York,
Right.
from
The
Pennsylvania.
landfills and at least the Auburn and Watertown municipal
Falls.
treatment plants have accepted it.
Yeah, and I heard someone from Casella Waste Industries at Senator Gasani's hearing said they want to do wastewater treatment at their, I guess it's in Ontario County, their Canandaigua facility. So.
Stanley.
So so it's
And then we have, the other thing that I want to highlight is the Horsehead's sand facility is
Schlumberger.
huge. The Schlumberger facility
And growing.
is massive and growing, and they're kind of slowly taking over this old complex, this old military complex from the 50s, right? And it's a huge hub of sand coming in from Minnesota and
Yeah, and the sand is being shipped in by rail.
Right.
So, and that's coming all across the southern tier by rail. And I did not too long ago follow the Wellsboro and Corning line down into Pennsylvania, and you can just see these piles of white along the line.
You see it everywhere, and some of it's not sand. I haven't seen what I toured that. There's
silica dust.
There's piles of other stuff there, and there's another facility in Elmira where they're bringing in sand and rail, and another one in Binghamton.
And so the Norfolk's, because the water being shipped from Painted Post is being shipped by rail, and there have been issues about time of the shipments, but the guy from Norfolk Southern came to a village meeting and said, we're just incredibly busy shipping sand.
Yeah.
And so
all of those rail cars leak constantly. They don't. The seals don't keep it in, so whenever they stop, the piles accumulate.
Oh, and it's just the fine dust that's coming up out of it.
There's this kind of debate that's, I don't know if it's still ongoing, but it kind of hit the local papers a few months ago about replacing the Letchworth trestle because of the need for heavier loads coming across. For all I can determine to be is another route for sand coming in, because it's another conduit, large east-west conduit, major line. And so that was kind of put in as to like this historical preservation, you know, argument, but it really wasn't phrased as this connect with this larger environmental question we're talking about. But it's certainly linked.
They have a weight and a speed restriction across the gorge on that bridge, so.
And if it collapsed, that could be a big contamination.
That's
the
bridge. The bridge is huge. It's a monster. It goes right across the Letchworth Gorge.
Yeah.
And it's like 100 years old or so, or.
Yeah, I don't know. It's steel, but it's
ancient.
It's old. It's bolted together and rusted.
Because that with the energy salt storage,
right.
The gas LP storage in Watkins Glen, there's an issue about the old trestle bridge across the Watkins Glen, and that's not able to withstand the traffic, but they're planning to use it. So,
one of the pieces that I had heard was that there's some of, I don't know if it's the same sand, but to bring sand from Canada into New York and Pennsylvania for use in fracking, that's one of the reasons that bridge needs to be replaced.
Well, I think what I liked about the rally was the fact that there were so many different outside groups that came in to support what we're doing here in Livingston County. So we know we're not alone in the fight. And given the cold day, I mean, I think with the wind chill, it was in single digits today, and we still had what I consider a very quality number of people that came out to support what we had. So it's heartening to see so much support.
Yeah, I thought it was a great showing of how many people were there and really excellent speakers. I stuck my head into the courtroom briefly. It was interesting to hear just a tiny bit of the court case, but I think people were here to support the town of Avon and what's happening, and all the great work that Frack Free Geneseo has been doing. So thank you.
Yeah, I think it's great to. It was a great symbolic place to have a rally, being on the front lawn of this very kind of quintessential looking courthouse. You know, right at the tip of this main street. It was great. Everybody driving down Main Street could clearly see what was going on. It's kind of heartening for the people as organizers, I think, to have these. It's for me to have rallies and have see the kind of solidarity in the movement and have a little fun with planning and. You know, we now have a gas company in a sumo suit and a bunch of fish with chemicals written all over them, that we can bring this energy and what we've learned from this rally to Albany or the next rally. You know, there's a lot of things going on this week. I mean, I think there's at least one event every day until next Monday or something. So, yeah, I was really excited, especially because of the cold and the people's engagement with you know, the songs at the end and things. I thought it went really well, and the amount of press that showed up, I was really pleased, very pleased with.
I think with the press, it shows that this is a very hot topic, and a lot of people are paying attention, because we had, and thanks to Zora, a lot of press coverage here today. So that was very good.
Yeah, I think that this was really what we needed up here. To really drive home that this is a local issue, that it's affecting local folks, and that it's affecting a diverse crew of folks. You know, it's not just an environmental thing. To have organic farmers out, dairy farmers, and you know, this wide variety of folks really shows how, like you said, with the tentacles creeping into New York, and how we're all being affected and will be even more affected by the by an increased gas presence here. So I think that it was really a good showing of the strength that we have in this area, and that, you know, there is going to be no matter what they're doing at the state level, you know, hopefully it'd be great if they just stopped it there and we wouldn't have to worry about it, but that's not likely, and that we are building this wall of resistance wherever we go, and that it is spreading, and that it is a grassroots movement that's not just, it's not radical, it's not a fringe, it's, you know, it's what is really important. It's a deep-seated issue for people all over New York, and I think we really highlighted that super well today.
I didn't catch a lot of the rally because I was inside watching the court proceedings, but the part I liked the most was when everyone was shouting the Pledge of Resistance as people,
Right.
lawyers and everyone were funneling.
Timing was perfect.
It was such perfect timing. The news was capturing it, and that was really uplifting.
If Governor Cuomo permits.
Hence, if Governor Cuomo permits.
High volume horizontal hydraulic fracturing.
High volume horizontal fracturing.
In any part of New York State.
In any part of New York State.
I pledge to join with others.
I pledge to join with others.
To engage in nonviolent acts of protest.
To engage in nonviolent active protest,
Including demonstrations.
including demonstrations,
And any other actions.
any other actions.
As my conscience leads me.
As my conscience leads me.
I make this pledge.
I make this pledge.
In order to prevent the destruction and poisoning.
In order to prevent destruction and poisoning
Of New York's water.
of New York's water.
Of New York's air.
Of New York's air.
Our food system.
Our food system.
On which life.
On which life.
Health.
Health.
And economic prosperity all depend.
On economic prosperity all depend.
Including that of our future generations.
Including that of our future generations.
Ban fracking now!
Ban fracking now!
All right. Good job.
So I think on behalf of Frack Free Geneseo, we'd like to say thank Chris,
Yeah.
who came all the way to film all this, and Rachel, who drove all that way, for coming today, and Zora for doing such a great job with everything, and all our people out there.
Yeah.
So Marianne and Carol and your friend.